Well, for more now, we want to bring in Isabel Guittard. She is the director of programs at Child Soldiers International. That is an NGO in London. It's good to have you with us. I want to ask you about the point here of him saying that he was a child soldier himself and using that as a defense. What's your take on that?
Well, by all accounts, he was a child soldier because he was recruited in his early teens, although there is some disagreement as to how old he was exactly when he was abducted. And his defense team is likely to use this as a justification for him to avoid a guilty verdict. But he is prosecuted for crimes that he committed as an adult. And as you said, he was a very influential commander within the LRA. So he should not avoid criminal responsibility because he was a victim of violations, of serious violations himself. His victims, who are probably still suffering as a result of the horrific abuse that they suffered because of him, are entitled to justice and to reparations. And what kind of justice would they get if Dominic Ongwen were to be completely exonerated of all criminal responsibility because he's a former victim himself? I mean, think of victims of sexual abuse, for example. Would they have no justice because their abuser were themselves a victim of sexual abuse when they were younger? However, It is very important to realize that, you know, his being a former child soldier is important to take into account at the sentencing stage, should he be found guilty, as a mitigating circumstance, of course.
Ms. Guittard, stand by. I want to pick up on the point of the LRA that you mentioned, the Lord's Resistance Army. Now, it murdered lots of children and it kidnapped many others, turning them into soldiers. But what happens to these children when they eventually return home? Our next report looks at their struggle to rejoin society. Take a look.
Machetes once used for appalling acts are now being used for constructive purposes. These former Ugandan child soldiers were trained to maim and kill. But now their nightmare is over.
I've been abducted in 1995 when I was still 9 years. So I stayed there for 5 years and then I come back. They pick me from my parents, and then we went with them. So they told my parents that let your sons go and assist us.
Alpha Obal and many others fought for the Lord's Resistance Army, or LRA. Today they repair bicycles and build houses thanks to another former child soldier. Aniwa Ricky Richard is helping those who managed to escape.
At the peak of the war, I realized that there were no people who were helping these former child soldiers if they come back from the bush. So I decided to offer myself to help these children to have a place where they can sleep, eat, and get a future, someone to talk to.
Most of them have spent years fighting in the bush. Here at Ricky Richards' organization, Friends of Orphans, they're taught new skills, which also helps them to process their trauma. Now these former sex slaves and soldiers are being retrained as hairdressers or handymen.
So far, we was in 22 soldiers. Out of 22, 19 has been killed. So I survived among those. By the time I came back home, I've got my parents. This is part of LRS, they have killed them. So I came back. I got that they are not there.
The LRA terrorized northern Uganda for many years. That's left these former child soldiers heavily stigmatized. Richard believes that only by giving back to the community will these haunted youngsters be able to create a place for themselves in society.
In this process, they reintegrate. And at the same time, the community look at these children that, oh, well, we thought these children were impossible, but these are children who just has problem and they need help.
Richard convinced national and international sponsors to invest in his project. Education and technical skills are key in helping the former child soldiers gain respect in society.
They begin to appreciate these children. And this is the message I've been telling the community through radio stations, through meeting the community, that these children are our children. They were forcefully abducted from us, and we were powerless to defend them.
Friends of Orphans has restored some joy to the lives of over 30,000 former child soldiers in northern Uganda. They can't get back their childhoods, but now they have some hope for the future and a peaceful place to call home.
A reason to hope for the future. Ms. Goddard, let me pull you back in and just ask you, how are former child soldiers, how are they reacting to this trial?
Well, we don't know exactly how they're reacting, all of them, but what's really important to bear in mind here is that without the ICC, these crimes may have never been investigated, as the Ugandan government hasn't been able to investigate them. So thanks to this trial, their stories are going to be heard by the whole world, and they may obtain justice and reparations. Good. Which is very important, as we've seen from the trial of Thomas Lubanga, the armed group commander from the DRC. So we're very supportive of the work of the ICC and the Office of the Prosecutor, because it's very important to hold perpetrators accountable to end this terrible violation and war crime against children.
Okay. Isabelle Guittard of Child Soldiers International joining us from London tonight. Ms. Guittard, thank you very much. We appreciate your time.